All right. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm here to tell you that there has never been a better time to build for VR. Immersive apps open new frontiers for exploring your creativity, reaching your audience in new ways, and building a successful business. My name's Jamie Keene, and I am a product director at Meta, leading our developer platform for Horizon OS. What that means is my team is responsible for the end-to-end experience if you decide to build for our platform. Anything from education and documentation, all the way out to deep integrations with the Unity tools that I'm sure most of you here work with every day. Now, before I jump in, I just kind of want to understand who do I have in the room. So can I get a show of hands? Who in here has published an app for a VR platform already? Okay. Who is actively building an app, but maybe hasn't hit publishing yet? Okay, cool. I'm going to assume the rest of you are either seriously considering building for VR or just kind of curious what I might have to say today. Bored for your afternoon, we'll see. What I want to cover today is really what's uniquely possible if you decide to build in VR, who you can reach, and what they're coming to our platform for, how you adapt your app, your content for that platform, and then, of course, we'll spend a little bit of time on how you get started. Let's dive in and talk first about why you should consider building for VR in the first place, for those of you who haven't started yet. I want to define a couple terms so that we all know what we're talking about. Meta Horizon OS is the operating system that runs on our Meta Quest hardware. If you're not familiar with our offerings here, Meta Quest 3 family is kind of our flagship set of virtual reality devices. Quest 3, that's the flagship device. It's got a wide field of view, infinite display, 4K resolution, higher storage, more comfort options, where Quest 3S has a lot of those same features at a more affordable price point, so you can reach our value-focused consumers. They're both powered by the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2 processor, which means you get full color whether you're building for a pass-through experience or building for something fully immersive. Cool. Basics. Now, when you build for this hardware, the important thing to know is you get access to the millions of lifetime users in over 200 countries that we've been building for the last few years. More importantly, though, the thing I'm hoping you all take inspiration on is that VR gives you the opportunity to reach those users with unique and delightful interactions you can't do anywhere else. Now, I'm only going to touch the basics here. There is a talk coming up later today from Jake and Dilmer that's going to go through the actual capabilities in a lot more detail. So I'd encourage you to check it out if you turn out to be interested. So some of those capabilities are things like pass-through camera, where you can build a mixed reality experience that's going to blend the physical and the digital worlds. Spatial audio, where you can put your user in the center of the action and make them feel fully immersed. And hand tracking, where you can add physical interactions or locomotion that helps people feel like they're actually controlling their environment. Together, these are going to allow you to build experiences that can't be delivered on another platform. Now, I'm sure some of you here are thinking, that's all well and good, but can I build a business in VR? And since launch, the Meta Horizon store has continued to evolve and grow. And all in all, we have over 300 apps on our store that have now generated over $1 million in revenue. You probably recognize some of the titles up here. In fact, what you might not know is we've had over 10 apps that have generated $50 million in revenue. And I want to show you a couple of our success stories so you can get a sense for what people are really building on our devices and why. First up, we've got Animal Company. Betting a few folks here might be familiar with that one. They've amassed over 1 million monthly active users. And they do that by focusing on a viral-first design philosophy. They've got deep partnerships with their community, with creators, and that allows them to pull in new folks and really maintain a highly engaged audience. UGG is a new breakout game you might not have heard of yet from Continuum. They launched to early access back in August and then went to full launch in September. And since then, they've reached over 650,000 players on Quest. And, maybe more importantly, sold over 55,000 bundles, dino eggs, cosmetics, premium currency. Now, these folks are an awesome example of leaning into an evolving games ecosystem. They keep their content fresh, events fresh, and that keeps their community engaged and growing. Small hint, they might be around to talk to. But why don't we take a look at what they're doing, because I think it's actually a lot of fun. All right, pretty great, right? Lots you can do here. And so now we've talked about, and you've seen some examples of the unique creative opportunities, and we talked a bit about the business opportunities on our platform. What I really want to get into is who's here? Who can you build for? Because one of the main questions I get from a lot of developers who haven't built for VR yet is really, who should I target, and is my audience there? And doing this well means we're going to need to break down gamers, because I'm pretty sure all of you would agree gamers covers a lot of ground. There's a lot of different audiences within it. When you look at the data, I do want to be very clear. Most of the time spent on Quest devices is spent gaming. These might be playing immersive apps in Meta Horizon Worlds, Xbox, using PCVR and Steam Link. But Horizon users are more likely to be gamers than the overall US population. In fact, 99% of US Quest owners game on one or more platforms in the last year, which is pretty massive when you compare that to 76% of the population in the US overall. If you're not here for gaming, if that's not your core business, that's okay. It's not the only thing we have on our platform. We continue to see folks building for use cases like social, entertainment, productivity, even fitness. And those folks are finding their audience and finding success. But it's important to understand who's coming here. What are their motivations when they come here if you really want to build a successful app? So we're going to break it down a little bit further. Designing a meaningful experience means understanding precisely who you are, not just people are gamers, but why did they come here in the first place? What motivates them to stay? So I'm going to spend a few minutes on audience segmentation, helping you break down who we have, what they love, why they come back, and how they spend money. When we talk about why users are doing what they do, it really comes down to understanding their core motivations. At Meta, we leverage one of the most influential theories in human motivation, which is called the self-determination theory, or SDT. I promise not to try to use too many acronyms at you today. SDT highlights 3 foundational motivations for why people do what they do. Competence. This is when someone wants to feel skilled, capable. They want to improve. People who like games that challenge their competence are looking for mastery over mechanics. I'm betting some of you might fall into this category. I certainly do. Like, how do I get better at a game, beat my high score? Relatedness. This is where you get into the human need for connection. That people want to feel socially connected, friends, family, or a community. And so players who are interested in relatedness, these are folks who really want to feel like they're part of something. Multiplayer modes, co-op quests, maybe just easy ways to share content with their friends and get them engaged off your game. And then last up, we've got autonomy. This is the need for people to feel control and ownership over what they're doing. So players who index on this are really mostly concerned with things like customizing avatars, open world exploration, or deciding on their own play style, customizing their character so they can choose their own adventure. Now we're going to layer in one more here, and you can see it at the end, which is the fourth motivation on leisure. A lot of people play to feel good. They want to de-stress. They want to get in a workout maybe when they've got some downtime. So lots of reasons people come here. Tragically, or good news, depending. Just like games themselves, there's not a single thing. Gamers aren't all the same. They don't all pick on one. In fact, some people come for building relationships. Others are going to come for some downtime. And so understanding these differences and who you care about reaching with your experience is really how you're going to build the best experience that you can. Let's dive into the four we've got. On Quest, our gamers, we break them out into four big categories: leisure lovers, mainstream omnivores, social explorers, and skill seekers. Let's talk leisure lovers. These are the folks who play to feel good. They might be showing up to get a mind or body workout in, or just looking to chill out and find some downtime. For these folks, gaming is mostly a solo activity. They're not actually here to play with friends. They don't care what's viral. They don't care what's trending. They care about maybe more self-improvement. They want to do things that challenge themselves over hopping on what happens to be hot right now. So you find our leisure lovers playing puzzle games, rhythm games, and active things that make them feel good. I suspect if I've got folks building for mobile in this room, you already build for these ones. These folks tend to be very highly biased towards playing on mobile, and it's pretty convenient for them to get in and out. And in terms of spending habits, free to play. These are your folks who they're not paying for a title out of the gate. They're more likely to watch an ad and continue gameplay than they are to pay up front. The mainstream omnivore, your average Joe, average me gamer. These are folks who like a little bit of everything. They want competition, exploration. They want to hang out with friends. They are balanced across those four motivators. You're not going to find that they index on any one thing too heavily. Omnivores enjoy solo play and playing with others. The interesting thing that stands out here is that when they play with others, they're going to play with friends and family. They're not looking to play with strangers or meet new people. They're really here to hang out with their existing social connections. That means when they think about buying games, they look for something that's got a solo mode and a multiplayer mode so that they can play on their own when they want, and they can play with their friends when available. So think action-adventure, think sports games here, often on console. And as the name implies, they like all sorts of genres. They will mostly gravitate towards AAA games or free-to-play titles over new releases, though. They want something that feels reliable. Spend-wise, practical. They're going to do research. They're going to read your reviews, and they're going to look for what's popular when they're making their choice where to spend. Okay. Your social explorers treat gaming as their main hobby. They play on mobile, they play on console, they play on PC. And as it says on the name here, these are folks who are playing to be social. which means if you want to reach them, you need to design experiences that allow them freedom to do their own thing, whether that's with friends, with your community, even strangers. The important piece is giving them time to mess around, build, hang out with friends without requiring them to complete an objective. So these folks are big spenders on your in-app purchases, in-game goodies. I want to unlock something for my avatar, or let's say I want progression benefits. Social influences the games they pick here. So I was just saying, your omnivores, they're going to go and read reviews, and they're going to look for what's currently popular that way. These folks are influenced by who they know. And so you are really looking to reach them through their network. And then last up, the skill seekers should feel the most familiar to a lot of you. Skill seekers are the most core of our gamer segments. They live for the challenge, and they're looking for games like shooters, action, or horror that allow them to build mastery. They play across platforms. We find them on VR, but also on console, PC, and mobile. And we actually find that they probably consume the widest range of titles: AAA, indie, early access. Now, in terms of social, these folks are pretty interesting. They do play socially. They like to play with others. But when they're interacting with your community, it's typically for competition, not for connection reasons. And when skill seekers are looking for new games, they're going to look at the price. They're going to look at what their friends are playing. They are the ones who will spend the most upfront. So these are your folks who are going to pay the most for premium titles. Quality is the biggest index here. Okay, hopefully that gives you a sense for who we have on our platform. Even within gaming as an audience, we've got a wide range of users you can choose to build for, and they're all looking for slightly different types of experiences. What this means for us is we have actually seen our content catalog explode. Content has never been deeper, more sophisticated, or more varied than it is today. So we have on our store titles in a wide range of genres: RPGs, sandbox, physics-based games. And we've seen breakout successes within each of those when folks are naturally finding the audience that resonates with them. Let's assume that if you haven't already published a title, or you're actively building it, that you see some benefit in reaching the folks I just talked about. Probably the next most important thing to understand is, how do you build for VR? What are the most important capabilities that we have available to you? And what are some unique considerations you should have if you're building on our platform? Creating content that's VR native means taking advantage of what's uniquely possible in the headset. I'm going to be honest here. What works and what does not work has taken us a lot of time to iterate on and really figure out. I get it. The gaming industry has been around 40 years. In theory, there's a lot to pull from. But it turns out a lot of what we've done on PC and console just doesn't directly translate to an immersive device. So what should you be thinking about? Well, VR offers unparalleled 3D immersion and a freedom of movement that you can't actually get on a screen. So you need to design content from the beginning to take advantage of 3D immersive environments. Don't just directly try to port a 2D game. You're probably not going to have as much success in the mechanics. The other thing we've seen a lot of folks leaning into, success from games that lean into immersive controls. Don't overly rely on joysticks. Allow people to use their whole body, allow people to use their hands to move through your experience. You can think of Beat Saber here as a pretty early success, right? Rhythm game using a lot of body movement and hands. But more recently, Gorilla Tag, IamCat, these are folks who found new and creative ways to get people involved. Full immersion gives you the opportunity to make your user feel like they're part of the scene, right? Like they can be part of the experience directly. They should be able to directly manipulate objects, potentially at life size, and move around the space naturally as though they have a sense of presence in it. That means taking the time to build interactions that meet people's expectations. Make your affordances easy to understand and learn. If it's got a handle, you should be able to pull it. A door should open like a door, a window like a window. Make sure things behave as a user expects. And use things like audio, visual, and haptic cues to teach your users what you need them to know throughout the experience. Make sure you're able to cue them when they're going off track. And I've mentioned it a couple times, but consider utilizing hand tracking so that your games feel really immersive. It sounds straightforward, but enabling players to interact with objects in the same way they do in the physical world, in your virtual world, makes a big difference in how easy it is for someone to learn. Now, I know I just said, make sure everything behaves exactly as a user expects. That is true, but at the exact same time, don't ignore the opportunity for surprise and delight. You want to create objects that are worth interacting with, that make your user have a sense of surprise, gives them a genuine emotional reaction when they interact. The best experiences in VR are things that are going to be reactive to the user, that make them feel like they're really part of the scene. And when it comes to genre, things that are uniquely powerful in headset, I would encourage you to consider building for mixed reality and make your experience environment aware. When you build a mixed reality experience, you get to blend the physical and the digital worlds. And what that lets you do is take users who are maybe not comfortable in full immersion, maybe users who aren't confident in their headset usage yet, and keep them grounded in an environment that they're already familiar with. Then layer in augments, bring in interactable objects or experiences in for gameplay. That gives you the unique ability to push boundaries. When you dial down your immersion level and include someone's environment, you let them interact with your game in a way that they understand, because the objects around them are things they already know. And that opens you up to new audiences, gives you wider reach than you might otherwise have. And you get to incorporate mechanics that are going to feel personalized and customized. So when you've got objects coming out from your furniture or from your walls, it really feels to the user like they're playing an experience that was designed for them, not something that could have been designed for anyone. If you decide to build for mixed reality, I'd suggest kind of a layered approach here. The very first thing you want to do is understand what objects do you need to recognize so that you can make them interactable in your experience. Design your digital objects, and then here's the hard part. Spend the time to design the interaction model to make sure it's consistent. The way that these MR experiences work the best is when users can easily and consistently understand how to interact with those virtual objects that are sitting in their space. That covers off kind of the unique capabilities. I'm going to go do one more plug and say, if you want to get into it in more depth, do hit up Jake and Dilmer's session this afternoon, where we're going to go into a lot more detail on the specifics of building in VR. Next, I want to spend a tiny bit of time on constraints, though. VR comes with constraints. VR sessions are not the same as building for mobile, console, or PC. Some of the reasons for that are probably pretty obvious. VR is immersive. So you've got a headset, you've got something that's directly on your face. And that does put limits on how long people want to be in the hardware. VR experiences, the best experiences, require focus. They often require physical movement. And that's going to put constraints on how long a user can focus, how long can they stay meaningfully engaged, and how often they're going to come back. All of this means that you need to design to deliver experiences that fit our session length, fit something different than maybe you would design on another platform. I don't want you to take away the wrong thing. People love the immersion and physicality of being in VR. You have to design for it to fit into their life. You can't design necessarily for long, multi-hour gameplay. You need to focus on high-intention moments that fit into what we call the Goldilocks zone, 20 to 40 minutes. This is where your experience needs to fit because it delivers value in the time that we've seen users be willing to engage before it starts to feel too long or uncomfortable and they want to take the headset off. So building for the Goldilocks zone is about increasing your flexibility, making sure users can have meaningful engagement that fits into how their day-to-day lives already work, rather than trying to change their behaviors to fit what you want. So if you want to do this well, I want to think about two things here. Ensure players can make progress in that session length. If folks feel they've got to have an hour to make progress in your game, they're only picking it up when they've got an hour to spare. It sounds obvious, but you need to design something where users feel successful in the time they have available. And the other side is to make sure you remove the stress that if they have to take off the headset, that they're going to lose track of something. I think if you've spent any time in VR, that dawned off, kind of taking things on and off, it is going to happen. Your spouse is going to interrupt, or a kid. For me, it's always my dogs. And you need to make sure that folks aren't going to lose progress if they have to do so. So in practice, here's a few tips. Deliver on your core experience of the game, the core mechanics that someone needs to learn in the very first 20 minutes. No long tutorials, no long text intros. Really make sure your first 20 minutes nail what someone has to know, and then rely on progressive disclosure. Also, the other thing about that first 20 minutes is get some quick wins in. Honestly, you gotta hook them in that first 5 to 10 minutes if you really want them to come back. One thing I want to be clear about is that while the Goldilocks zone, that 20 to 40 minutes, means you should be focusing on shorter loops and progression, it doesn't actually mean that's the only amount of time people will play. Some folks are going to stay in headset longer, but what you're looking for is building your core loops to fit 20-minute intervals. So round-based games, you should be able to play a match in 20 minutes. Single player, your baseline levels or objectives should fit that time frame. And if you rely on recurring systems like weekly quests or rewards, they should also fit in that 20-minute interval so that folks who want to chain can play longer, but everybody's getting something out in that time frame. You should build in a natural breakpoint every 10 to 15 minutes. Like I said, give people the opportunity to take a drink, talk to a spouse, go to the bathroom, and not interrupt their session. And lastly, make it really easy to come back in. So in your game, think about regular autosaves and communicating to users that that is happening. Remove fear of them losing progress. And if you're building maybe an entertainment or other type of experience, consider things like session persistence so that people can easily come back, and adding controls to resume that are really obvious. Okay, so we've covered opportunity, the audience, the game mechanics. I want to spend just a few minutes here on what are the resources that are available to you. And as I mentioned, we're only going to cover the basics here. There's a lot more detail. First up, Developer Center. We've got a great series of published blogs, content on best practices that will help you understand even more detail than I went into today on the ecosystem, the audience. Who do we have on platform, and how is that evolving over time? We also cover things like discovery surfaces. How do you get your app noticed? How do you optimize? Best practices on monetization and growth loops in VR. So how do you bring your users back? And it's also where you're going to find documentation, links to our tools, and updates. If you are trying to get started and not quite sure where or how to go about that, download the Meta SDK for Unity and jump in with what we call building blocks. These are prefabs that are going to help you incorporate our core mechanics in very, very easy to follow steps. Could be pass-through camera, hand tracking and gestures, LLM integrations, even multiplayer modes. They're all available in the Meta SDK for Unity and make it really easy to get your project up and running. Now, some of you, if you're not already building in VR, you might not have a headset. And Meta XR Simulator is going to let you test directly from your desktop without requiring our hardware. You can simulate physical reality, so you can test against multiple room layouts if you're building something for MR. And you can simulate things like device controls, input options to make sure things play as you expect. We also have record and replay. So if you're trying to automate test cases, that's pretty quick and easy. And you can test both solo and multiplayer settings without having to have multiple people. If you've got your headset, debug in real time using immersive debugger. We've got you, this is relevant, I think, for your developers, but also your tech artists. If you want to really quickly inspect how things look in a headset and make changes. You can also debug mixed reality experiences, understand what your scene is seeing and why things might not be working the way you expect, and monitor state changes so you can identify issues in your console logs. And you might have heard, I think, yesterday, but you can now actually connect our immersive debugger to an MCP server so you can troubleshoot and modify in real time using AI. I spent a good bit of time talking about mixed reality, so I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we do have a lot of capabilities for you here. There's kind of three big things that make up mixed reality when you're building for VR. We've got pass-through and occlusion, which is what does our front-facing camera see? And then anchors, which are going to allow you to place virtual objects in a physical space. So if I wanted to have a poster behind me, I don't know, maybe covering up that logo, not actually on purpose, just the only thing that's sitting there, you could put an anchor on it, and then the next time you load into the headset, it's going to spawn that virtual object directly behind me. And scene is how you understand those physical objects that you're able to interact with. So that's a table, that's a sofa, those are a number of chairs, and here are things you can do with them. We've got building blocks for these, so you can easily create your basic components. And then Mixed Reality Utility Kit is going to give you abstractions that make it easier to get going building. And now the fun part. If you are building for VR, if you're considering, I'm going to give you one more incentive while I'm here, which is that we're currently hosting the Meta Horizon Start Developer Competition. This is a 5-week global challenge for VR and mobile developers to create innovative content. We've got categories for entertainment, lifestyle, and gaming, and we're giving away $1.5 million in cash prizes. So we've got rewards on things like most creative, technical excellence, incorporating advanced features, and more. There's only a couple weeks left, but I still want to call it out, so submit by December 9th here, and hit up the QR code for some more information. As I said at the top, we think there's never really been a better time to build for VR. And I'd like to invite all of you, if you have the time, to come see us at the booth almost directly across from here to see all of our tools in action. If you can't, download the Meta SDK for Unity and get started from there. Now, thank you again for your time.